Hey everybody, Troll Bully here, the troll you can trust, back with another World of Warcraft video, and in today's video, we're going to go over Dire Maul jump runs. So I've had healers and tanks coming up to me and asking me how do I make gold as they are having trouble making gold themselves. I understand at this point in the game a lot of people are pretty much saving up for their epic mount to get ready for Battlegrounds coming up on December 10th. This video will cover one way that you and a healer can run something that is free of ganking and very lucrative. In Dire Maul jump runs, you can come out with blues to sell, Thorium ore, dense stones, arcane crystals, random world epics, and the epic book to get Quel Serrar for starters. Here's a list of my gear. I have some decent gear for doing this, and if you're finding yourself less geared, then don't worry, as you will still be able to do Dire Maul jump runs. My healer's gear I don't currently have, as she isn't online at the moment, but needless to say, she is fairly decked out. Since we only kill 2 bosses, I run 2 sets of trinkets. I run these 2 for trash mobs and the first boss. For the last boss, I run a mixture of these 3 trinkets depending on what's not on cooldown. With Dire Maul jump runs, you ideally want your time for completion to be around 12 minutes, as once you complete your 5th dungeon, then the first dungeon will be ready to be entered again, as you're only allowed to run 5 dungeons per hour. Freezing this right here, I wanted to pinpoint the locations of where you could potentially get a Quel Serrar book from a Dusty Tome. Over on the other side where you see those plants is where a Dusty Tome could potentially spawn. Now, it is a little bit out of the way to get there for this book right here, but depending on how determined you are to get this book is all up to you. Now, as soon as you enter the dungeon, you pretty much want to book it right from the get-go. Jump down right here, maybe wave at your person as you're falling, whoever jumps first, and you're going to want to cross over this area right here. We've done this so many times, you kind of like, start learning the ins and the outs of kind of saving yourself a couple seconds here and there, as you can see, charging the deer and then moving forward. I'll turn around right here because I know my healer was asking for potential help and then she realized, hey, don't need you, get away from me. So I start going over here in this direction, which is going to be coming up to the, well, not necessarily the first Dusty Tome that you can spot, but the first Dusty Tome that can actually be very easily obtained. Freezing it right here, if you see that little pod over there on the right in front of that little pod is going to be where you're going to see the Dusty Tome. It's very dark and it's somewhat hard to see if you're not really looking out for it, but just know to always look in that direction whenever you're going across the wall here. Continuing on the wall, we're going to make our way to the door in hopes that the patrol that goes through this hallway door right here into the next room, we don't hit. Even worst case scenario, if I do run into this mob up here and aggro it, even if my healer is out grabbing herbs, being a flower picker, I'm able to actually solo this in my current gear. Not saying that this is going to be able to be done by anybody out there that's doing these Dire Maul jump runs, but needless to say, once you hit a certain point, you shouldn't even have to worry even engaging this mob at half HP. I ended up pulling the mob, which does suck because it's going to cost us about 45 seconds of time. It's always better to make sure the mob pats away rather than killing it, unless you have an outstanding damage group. After killing that pat, which can easily be avoided, we go into the next room, and where we are currently right now is where a ghost mushroom or a random ad just kind of sits around. And if you happen to pull the pat and that ad, that really does suck liquid ass, as now you're going to be behind 1 minute and 30 seconds on average. For this boss right here, we end up skipping it to make sure we reach our 12-minute timer, and since I'm not Fury Prot, my damage will be lower since I am basically deep Prot spec, and you don't need to kill this elemental to actually talk to the tree and have him break down the doors. So to keep on our 12-minute pace, what we end up doing is we just skip him, and we just keep moving forward. Our goal isn't really what's off of that boss, but mainly to find another Quel Serrar book, and to find some arcane crystals. We're currently in the process right now of trying to get our Sulfuron hammer crafted, as we ended up getting the eye on our first Ragnaros kill. So basically, it's just us two in here trying to make as many arcane crystals as we can with making a little bit of money on the side as well. This pat right here can sometimes be avoided. It's very tricky. Depending on if you're out of the gates right at the get-go coming in here, you actually will have a slightly better chance of missing him. But if you see him padding towards you as you're going into this hallway, your probably best bet, depending on how far in the hallway you are, is just to kill it. If you see him basically where we are right now, padding towards the next boss, then you just let him keep going forward here, and where I'm looking where that ghost mushroom is kind of in the direction where the pat will go. And then you just let him pass, go over here to the left, and then set up for the boss. Waiting for Kaizen to pick her ghost mushroom flower, she's going to come back over here, and then we're going to start on this boss. So this boss right here has a little bit of a trick to it, and that's one of the reasons why a Shaman healer is very good. Kaizen will drop a grounding totem, which this boss will sacrifice on the altar. Instead of it being her, if she ends up getting sacrificed, could potentially kill her, or if myself gets sacrificed, the end result is going to be that this boss is going to be gaining HP, dragging on the fight, which could potentially cost your healer a potion or two, or going completely and then you just don't have enough mana or firepower to down this boss. Me being deep prot spec, these grounding totems are a lifesaver. So throughout this fight, I try to keep all 4 of my debuffs on the boss, and then eventually, as soon as it gets to execute range, then just finish it off. If you don't have a Shaman healer in your group at all whatsoever, or anybody that can drop totems, an item that is very useful here is the Barov Peasant Collar. Especially if both of you put this on, you can have the first 2 sacrifices be one of the Barov Peasant Collars that you summon with this trinket. It's not guaranteed, but reduces the chances of one of you or your healer, being put on the altar. And if you're actually a Fury Prot spec, which you can do a lot more damage output than I currently can right here, having 2 to 4 sacrifices, depending on your gear, should be more than enough time to down this boss, letting you just get a nice clean kill, waste no time, and start moving on to the very last boss. Now, once this boss dies, even though it doesn't show it here, what we normally do is since I'm the miner, I will take the loot off the first boss. No matter what dies, I will take that. And off the second boss, since it drops 2 blues, Kaizen will end up taking that. Now, we drop on this platform right here. As you can see, as we were falling, we did not pay attention and we ended up pulling the boss. So it's very important that as you're falling down, if you're just out of habit and not paying attention, make sure you always land on that platform, just so you don't end up having to kill something you don't want to. But going back to how we distribute our loot, just to make sure the gold is on even terms, since I'm a miner, I'm going to get everything at the very end of the dungeon, which includes the arcane crystals, but every 3rd or 4th arcane crystal I'm going to give to Kaizen. All the herbs she's going to take and not share, and when it comes to loot, the first boss, everything that drops is mine. The second boss, which always drops 2 blues, she's gonna get. And if the last boss ends up dropping 2 weapons, you're looking at a 10 gold profit. So basically, splitting everything up this way, your healer is gonna probably come out with a little bit more money, especially if the arcane crystals are not dropping. But then again, you really want to treat your healers well. Just saying. Even though tanks and healers are very selfless roles, you really want to treat your healers good. And in this case, I make sure I treat her very well, make sure she gets her money so she can get her epic mount, and so that she wants to keep doing these. But even though that we're still trying to farm these arcane crystals for our Sulfuron hammer for one of our guildmates, I still need a metric shit ton of arcane crystals for whenever we need to start crafting Thunder Fury come Phase 3. So at the beginning of this room, I went and talked to the tree while Kaizen was going off picking flowers, making use of her time while I'm talking to the tree and the tree does his whole RP, and then Frogger my way over to the broken door. Make sure you RP with the tree as well, as it increases chances of arcane crystals, and if that doesn't work, make sure you use your spit and fart macro, which if you watched my other videos, you would know about, which would increase drop chances of arcane crystals. Now, strolling up to the very last boss, we're going to be switching our trinkets to the AoE trinkets to make sure when the ads come out during Phase 2, once he reaches 50%, we can immediately annihilate everything. As with the 2 AoE damage from the trinkets, and the damage done from the spike on the shield, should make quick work of all the ads whenever they spawn. So now we're walking over to the ledge and we're going to drop down. We want to make sure we drop into this crack, drop right here, take little fall damage, come right over here, and then we're going to take a peek to see if there's a dusty tome right over there underneath that flower. So now that we're at the bottom of the wall right here ready to pull the boss, this is the last chance to make any trinket or gear changes that you want to make this fight easier. I'm waiting on Kaizen, so I'm just going to make some bandages for later. And she's going to drop down, place her totems, mana up, and then we're going to pull this boss. Even if you don't have 2 AoE trinkets, but you do have a shield with a mithril spike or some sort of a spike on it, it's okay. You will still be able to kill the ads at the end, as I'll show you a little clip, as there have been times where I've forgotten to change my AoE trinkets, which I then get some shit from Kaizen, but you know, it is what it is. She makes her own screw-ups too. Like pulling a shit ton of lashers in that one Frogger room. So what we're going to do here is we're going to pull this boss, tank him up against the wall, as he does have a knockback, and we don't want to get knocked back into the middle of the room in fear of aggroing a bunch of other shit, especially when the other imps come out during Phase 2. but put myself up against the wall. The knockback will sometimes knock me up on top of the ledge where Kaizen currently is standing, but for the most part, if you put your back close enough to the wall, you should be okay. Just know that when you do get knocked up, make sure you quickly run down and taunt the boss off the healer, and also to potentially prevent a reset, which would really suck liquid ass. If you're healing this fight, a big thing that you really want to look out for is to make sure to dispel the mana burn that he applies. Other than that, the first 50% is pretty tank and spank. Hell, the entire fight's basically tank and spank, so you just want to watch out and dispel that mana burn, and then once 50% is reached, the wall breaks. I run in here to make sure no imps make it out into the main room, start doing a couple demoralizing shouts, bundle them all up together, AoE taunt, pop my trinket, and then just watch numbers just go all over the screen. Not big dick numbers, but, you know, just miniature dick numbers. But then again, they happen so often and so fast. As you can see, the minions all slowly dwindle and die. As you can see, I was spamming cleave right after a 20% when the boss hit that, which I honestly didn't really need to do. So in all honesty, as soon as 20% hit, I should have popped Berserker Rage and just spam the living hell out of Execute. Kill the boss before more ads do spawn. I'm double checking just to make sure that there was no book there, and then slowly go collect the spoils of war. And it's always a good feeling running up to a couple or a few rich thorium veins in hopes of an arcane crystal. Stay tuned to the end and I will show you a quick little video of not actually having any of the good AoE trinkets on, and still how you can down the boss and then kill all the other ads as well. Also, when you're doing these jump runs, don't feel bad that if you feel like you're using too many mana potions at the beginning or anything like that. You will find yourself progressing through these jump runs, especially if you are getting gear as well. You will progress through getting gear, better stats, and you'll also progress just mechanically knowing the fights, right paths to take, and everything like that. So you'll see two forms of progression when you're doing these, and it is actually a very good feeling. I know Kaizen, whenever she said I don't have to use mana potions anymore, because it was me figuring things out and her as well figuring things out as well, which led to, you know, our own form of duo progression just by doing Dire Maul jump runs. So this attempt that you're looking at right now is me with no AoE trinkets on, and the damage that you're seeing being done right here is from my spike on my shield and Kaizen's totem. Other than that, there is no other damage going out, and you can see the difference in how fast the imps are dying when you have 2 AoE trinkets compared to 0. And there you have it, everybody. That is Dire Maul jump runs with just 2 people. And you don't have to be insanely geared either. The more gear you have is just basically going to save you money on consumables. And also, that run was about 12 minutes long, which is pretty much the ideal number. As you can see here, this is the recording that I took of the dungeon that you all just witnessed. And that's going to wrap up the video of how Kaizen and I do our duo jump runs. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed the video and made you laugh before you leave positive, please get a nice karate chop and like, subscribe button. Make sure you comment down below. Support's greatly appreciated. And other than that, I'll catch you all in the next video.